Firstly, the key thing about China is that it's the most rapid growth by a major economy that's ever occurred in the whole of human history. And that's not saying that in order to exaggerate or something, because I think in very serious matters, there's no purpose to exaggeration at all. We can just look at what has happened, though. Let's first compare it to other countries which underwent major economic development. When Britain industrialized at the time of the Industrial Revolution, it was around 2% of the world's population. When the US began to grow very rapidly after the Civil War, it was about 3% of the world's population. When the Soviet Union began to develop very rapidly after 1929, it was about 8% of the world's population. But when China began to grow rapidly in 1978, it was 18% of the world's population. Furthermore, China's growth is faster than any of those economies ever succeeded over such a long period of time. So you've never in the whole of human history had such rapid economic growth maintained for such a large period of time. And then look at it from the point of view of what it means for human people, which is more important because economics is not an end in itself. It's merely a means to an end, a very important means, but nevertheless just a means to improve the conditions of human beings. In 1949, at the time of the creation of the People's Republic, China was almost the poorest country in the world. According to the statistics, it was only 10 countries with lower per capita GDP. Now, China, by its international standards, by its national standards, is a moderately prosperous economy. And in about either next year or the year after, depending on exactly the growth rate, it will become a high-income economy by World Bank standards. But what does that mean? China is larger than all the other high-income economies in the world. China will have lifted more people to the advantage of high-income economy, which is not just an income. It means to have leisure, health, environmental protection, education, and all these other things. That's the purpose of all this, than all the other countries in history put together. And look at the transition which is involved. For example, one Chinese friend, her great-grandmother, who was still alive in the 1990s, had bound feet. And that was the position of Chinese women. Well, I think the most complicated social situation in the whole world must be that of a young Chinese woman, because they've gone from being a level of income, which is in 1949, or this is for older women, obviously, but I'm looking at how that accumulated for women, that was roughly equivalent to Shakespeare's England, to a modern economy during a single lifetime in just over 70 years. Somebody who was born around 1949 has gone roughly from the Elizabethan period in England to modern society in the course of their single lifetime. And this is the level of improvement of human conditions. There's never been anything like that. That's why the attacks on China are so ridiculous. You could imagine somebody who said, well, China is not perfect. This or that could be improved. Most people in China would agree with that. But then it's a gigantic step forward for such an enormous quantity of human beings, and to have the West therefore engage in silly, attacks, etc. on it is so stupid. So that's what the scale of the achievement is. Then look at the present situation. Okay, during that whole period, you said a whole industry of books on the coming collapse of China. China is always going to collapse next year. And then when it doesn't collapse the next year, it's then going to collapse the next year. And after 10 or 15 years, when it still hadn't collapsed, the person who incorrectly predicted this collapse for the last 15 years is then put on television and presented as a China expert. That's having been totally disproved by all the facts. That's the reality of the way this thing is dealt with in China. Okay, right. The latest round of all this is because of the situation. Obviously, all economies in the world were hit badly by COVID, and China was no exception to that. And therefore, China's economy slowed down a bit. But let's look at what happened. Firstly, the data's out from 2023. China's economy grew 5.2%. The US grew 2.5%. That means that China's economy grew more than twice as fast as the United States. Because there are a lot of ups and downs during COVID, because of lockdowns, etc., it's probably better to take the whole COVID period as a whole. I go back to 2019. In that time, China's economy grew by 20.1%, and the US economy grew by 8.1%. European economies, incidentally, grew about 3 or 4%. So China's economy grew 2.5 times as fast as the United States and between 5 and 7 times as fast as Europe. But when you read in the paper, you read there's a crisis in China. heaven help us, right? In that case, if you grow 2.5 times as fast as somebody else, and it's supposed to be the economy which is growing fast, which is in crisis, while the one which is growing more slowly is in good nick, then probably you need more crisis-ridden economies in the world. All this type of thing is nonsense. It's also, incidentally, very dangerous nonsense because not to understand the real thing can lead to very, very catastrophic mistakes. The ones which I remember was this Hitler famous statement before he invaded the Soviet Union: one good kick at the door and the whole rotten structure will come crashing down, which was used to justify the invasion of the USSR, launching the biggest war in human history. One of the good things which came out of that was the total destruction of Hitler's regime. But unfortunately, 27 million people died in the Soviet Union. So this is sort of dangerous nonsense that's been put out. And I've never seen such a level of false. I've been writing, as you said, about the Chinese economy for over 30 years. I have never seen such a level of falsification, fake news in the most literal sense, as is going on at the present time with the facts. Okay. Look at real problems. Well, the real problem is that China is making the transition to a high income economy. As I say, by World Bank standards, it'll achieve it either the year or after the year after. And therefore, of course, the society is becoming much more complex and the demands of the people are therefore becoming much bigger. If we go back to 1949, life expectancy in China was 35 on the most widely cited estimate, 42 on the highest estimate. And now life expectancy in China is around 78. And in the big cities like Shanghai and Beijing, it's over 80. So again, in the course of a single lifetime, life expectancy is doubled. And also the level of education has been transformed. I had a wonderful experience with one of my best students teaching Chinese university. She said, look, I'm a peasant, she said. She showed me a photograph of her peasant house. And then she said, well, that's our old peasant house because we keep that because we use it for storage. And this is our new peasant house. And this is about 4 times as big. And they've kept the old one so that they can, keep old furniture and all that type of thing in it. And so she comes to a peasant. What's she got? She's got a PhD. She speaks English fluently. And she's literally come from a peasant farming background to be this. This is incredible type of transformation. Or I had a wonderful experience with talking to a young woman, the complications with her father, because her father thought, China's got some patriarchal side, sort of thought he could tell her what to do and said, Dad, I'm sorry that, life's not like that anymore. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to decide where I'm going to go. I'm going to decide where I'm going to live. And, that's the end of the matter. I'm sorry, you ain't got no rights. She liked her father. It wasn't a thing, but it was just, you had to explain these things. So there's this tumultuous improvement in the lives of people, which is going on. So the first thing is that the society is going to become much more complex. Secondly, there are some technical economic problems because an advanced economy has to invest more than a less advanced economy in order to grow. And China's therefore got to continue to have very high rate of investment for a long period of time. China's projection is that it will double its per capita GDP between 2020 and 2035. That means it'll grow by 100%. In comparison, the US economy on its present growth rate will go to about 40%. So there are all those types of problems of success and increasing complexity of society. But China's already gone through this. It's gone from a transition where the life of the person, the great goals of China is such a poor country, which have a bicycle and have a sewing machine. Now, you car and an apartment, obviously with it, in foreign holidays and all those types of things. Their life has been absolutely transformed. And so there are going to be many transitions to this, and they'll continue to have to be made because the country is advancing so much.